This lesson on academic writing skills is clauses and connectors. We will begin with the introduction, then we move on to the clauses and connectors. Finally, we will have some practices and quizzes to check out learning. Now let's start from the introduction. We'll learn three things. What is a phrase and a clause? Why it's important to know clauses and connectors, and the types of clauses. So first, what is a phrase and a clause? A phrase is a group of words without a subject or a verb, while a clause contains a group of words with the subject and a verb that functions as a part or all of a complete sentence. For example, he, a teacher, is a phrase that needs a verb. So by adding the verb is, we can make it an independent clause and make the thought complete. Then, why is it important to know clauses and connectors? There are three major reasons. When we write, they help us make our writing smooth and make the relationship between clauses clear. Moreover, they help create sentence variety. Finally, it's important to note that clauses can be divided into two types, independent and dependent, depending on whether the clause can form the sentence by itself. An independent clause, which expresses complete thought, can form the sentence by itself, while a dependent clause, which expresses an incomplete thought, can't. So, to form a sentence, a dependent clause must be combined with an independent clause by the use of connectors. For example, these are two independent clauses, and they can form sentences by themselves. However, we can combine them together into one sentence by using the connector. So, because he can see different insects becomes a dependent clause with a connector because. And he likes to go hiking becomes the main clause in the sentence. Now, let's move on to learn the clauses and connectors. As we already know, there are different types of dependent clause, and in this lesson, we'll be focusing on the three major dependent clauses: adverb, adjective, and the noun clauses, and the four major connectors: subordinators, coordinators, correlative conjunctions, and conjunctive adverbs. Now let's take a look at the three major types of dependent clauses. First is the adverb clause. An adverb clause starts with a subordinating conjunction, and it functions as adverb to modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. When the adverb clause is placed before the independent clause, a comma must follow the adverb clause. As can be seen in the sentences, if is used to connect two clauses. When the if clause is placed before the independent clause, a comma has to be used. Next is the adjective clause. An adjective clause starts with a relative pronoun like who, whom, which, whose, or that. An adjective clause functions as adjective and usually follows the noun or pronoun it modifies. To refer to people, we use the word who and whom. To refer to the things, we use which, and that can be used to refer to people or things. For example, the relative clause starting with the relative pronouns who and which are used to modify the woman and Taipei 101. Finally, is noun clause. A noun clause starts with a WH question word like what, when, where, why, who, how, that, whether, or if. It functions as a noun and can be a subject, object, or complement. As we can see in the sentences, the noun clauses starting with the word how function as the subject in the first sentence, object in the second sentence, or the complement in the third sentence. After looking at the three major types of dependent clauses, let's move on to learn the four major types of connectors. So, to join a dependent clause to an independent clause, we use subordinating conjunctions, or also called the subordinators. And to join two independent clauses together, we can use coordinating conjunctions, or also called coordinators, correlative conjunctions, or conjunctive adverbs. First, let's look at the subordinators. Here are the subordinators used to show time, place, manner, or reason. And here are the subordinators used to show purpose, concession, contrast, distance, or result. As can be seen in the sentences, a comma must be used when the clause is placed before the independent clause. The next three types of connectors can be used to connect two independent clauses. Here are the coordinators, which we can remember as fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. As can be seen in the sentence, a comma must be used with the connector. We can also use correlative conjunctions to connect two similar or contrast thought. Finally, here are some conjunctive adverbs that can be used with a semicolon and a comma to connect clauses. However, it only shows the relationship of the two clauses. It doesn't combine the two clauses into a grammatical unit. The conjunctive adverbs are usually placed between the two independent clauses with a semicolon. However, it can also be placed at the end of the sentence, and the comma must be placed before or after the conjunctive adverb. We've learned three major types of clauses and the four major types of connectors. Now, let's practice to check out how much we have learned. Please choose the types of clause. Here are the answers. The red words after, how, and which are the connectors for each clause. Next, please rewrite the sentences with connectors. So here are the answers. We can use the connectors in red to combine the sentences. Some connectors with similar meaning can also be used. Now, let's move on to the quiz to check our learning. First, please identify the following words as phrases or clauses. Here are the answers. As what we have learned, a clause has a subject and a verb, so the red words if, how, and which are the connectors used to introduce different clauses. For the first one, go hiking on weekends, we can add a subject, I, to make it a clause. And for the third one, how to make ice cream, we can add the subject and verb, I wonder, or the verb and complement, is my question, to make it a clause. Next, please match the features with the appropriate types of clause. Here are the answers. As what we have learned, the three dependent clauses starts with different connectors. Adverb clause starts with a subordinating conjunction, while noun clause starts with a WH question word, that, whether, or if. An adjective clause starts with a relative pronoun. Now, let's quickly review what we have learned. As what we've learned, the three major types of clause starts with different connectors, and it's important to note that some words may be used to introduce more than one type of clause. For example, who can be used to introduce both adjective and noun clauses. And here are the four major connectors. So when we want to express the same meaning, we can use different types of clauses and connectors to make our writing smooth, make the relationship between clauses clear, and create sentence variety. Thank you for joining the lesson. The lesson is funded by the Ministry of Education.